Good afternoon. I'm golf course industry publisher and editor-in-chief Guy Cipriano, and welcome to our webinar, Fall Disease Protection and Plant Health Tips from BASF. Over the next hour, BASF Senior Technical Specialist Jen Browning will reveal strategies using proven practices, innovative tools, and reliable season-long controls for protecting high-value playing surfaces from clear threats and hidden adversaries like overwintering pathogens. A quick housekeeping items before we get to Jen. If you have any questions, type them into the chat function and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar, time permitting. And also, all registrants will receive the replay of today's webinar in their inboxes within 5 to 7 business days to watch again at their convenience. Now on to the webinar. Thanks for joining us, Jen.
Thanks for having me. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here this afternoon, and let's get started. We're going to talk today about fall disease protection and plant health, and I'm going to minimize this little screen and pop that out of the way. My name is Jen Browning. I am a senior technical specialist with BASF, and to kick us off, I want to familiarize you with myself and also our starting lineup of technical experts at BASF. I am an Oregon State University graduate, and I've been with BASF. This is the beginning of my 16th year. I'm based out of the Denver metro area, and I have a degree in turf and horticulture and another in entomology. And my colleagues in technical service are Kyle Miller in the Northeast and Dr. Emma Lukabaugh in the Southeast. And they also lead technical webinars and trainings, and hopefully you'll get to attend some of those or meet them in person. To start us off, what I wanted to do was tell you what we're going to talk about today, which are our leaf spot pathogens. The biggest one of the ones that's on the forefront of everyone's mind as we head into fall is dollar spot. And then we'll also include our other leaf spots like Drusillera and the melting out diseases when those show up in the fall. And then we'll turn our attention to snow mold. And then we will finish up with plant health and protecting turf grass as it goes into the fall, overwinters, and comes back up in the spring. How can we set it up for success to look its best next year? We'll also kind of interweave some best practices that help us practice the best cultural management that we can. And I'll share some things with you that I've picked up this season and then throughout my years of experience that will help us get the best for our bang and all the labor and money that we spend taking care of turf. First, let's set the table. I want to tell you a little bit about what I've seen this season from the very beginning of 2026 when we were still in winter up to really this week, because what's happened so far matters for what we're going to do now to carry us through December. So first, I want to tell you that we've seen a couple of diseases that we don't see every year, and that's kind of unusual. I feel like for the last 5 years, we've said every year is unusual, and that's because it's really been true. So moving kind of west to east in January to now, southern blight was back this year. It's really just been in California, but it was confirmed that it showed up in California again. Kind of ironic because every time I try to do a trial on it, it doesn't show up, but it did show up this year. The other was bacterial wilt, which is something that can go years that we don't hear about it, don't see it, 3 confirmations, and then a couple places where it's out for diagnostics. Mostly central transition zone, but kind of interesting because that one can go long periods of time that we don't hear about bacterial wilt, don't have any suspicion for it. It's also been a heavy Pythium year for root rot and also for root dysfunction. So bentgrass, multiple states, it's kind of been around. It's really a heavy focus on Pythium this year, and that has to do with how hot and dry it's been, how much we're watering, how humid it is in our canopies. The other thing that's kind of interesting is primary anthracnose. We see anthracnose every year, but it's very often a secondary pathogen. This is Colletotricum that shows up all on its own in lots of different places, and it's the first thing. It's not coming in on turf that's been damaged, turf that's been mowed rough. This is anthracnose that shows up first, and then other things follow, and I'll mention it again in just a minute. The other thing is lots of desiccation, either before or after edema. And the edema is coming on either because the turf is not able to let go of water from irrigation, or it's just swelling up, and then that's followed by dry downs and lots of different and interesting weather-related injury. And that's because the weather is so wild this year in all different parts of the country. People are experiencing all different kinds of weather-related injury, lots and lots of dry down, sometimes very destructive dry down. Tons of the unexpected, in addition to those diseases that we don't see, there's some new diseases that have shown up in the last 24 months, and lots of BOGO, which is not something that I typically see. So what that means is buy one, get one free in field trials. We put out a field trial, we're looking for one disease, another one shows up. That's actually not the most common thing. Secondary anthracnose, sure, but this is not that. I'll show you an example. The other thing is multi-state concurrent disease outbreaks. When I showed you that map that showed the 3 tech reps for BASF, I covered 22 states. It's not common that a disease that shows up in the Pacific Northwest is also showing up in the arid Southwest, showing up in the transition zone, showing up in the northern states. But that is what has been happening. That started last year, it's continued this year, and it's the same disease. Not normal. Lots of interval challenges. So we've been under high pressure conditions, and we're seeing the need to shorten intervals. But because of all the activities that we're trying to manage on golf courses, we're really needing to kind of stretch out intervals, or we're taking that risk when we really shouldn't be. Sometimes we don't have any choice. We've got events at the courses, we've got staffing issues at courses, we've got emergencies at courses, irrigation issues, other things we have to deal with, and it's hard to hit 21 or 28 days, let alone 14, when we really need to be moving those dates in and we're having to push them out. It creates some stuff. The other thing that I'm seeing is that for me, I have warm and cool season, a lot more cool season in the West. It's having more issues than warm season. I have some courses where they have warm season fairways, and then we've got cool season, and then we've got warm season again. Callers right up on cool season greens. It's the cool season that's having a lot more difficulty than the warm season. That's just my 2 cents. The other geographies might be seeing something different. You may be seeing something different. The goosegrass season is going long this year. It's extending, and we're having more germination later into the year, but the fall POA season is a little bit earlier. Already seeing a little bit of germination, while we're getting germination of goosegrass farther into the summer in some places than we've had before. So that makes interesting herbicide application windows longer, needing herbicide pre-emergent and needing post later into the season. And the other thing that I saw just recently is that annual bluegrass weevil, ABW, is moving west in the transition zone in the central states. Every pest moves west all the time. Pestilence just does that. We've seen more dollar spot in the west all the way into the corners and the edges, but it's starting to really pick up speed. So is ABW. So is emerald ash borer. So is everything. More nematode pressure, including new nematode outbreaks in multiple states. Everything is worse. No, not really. Some things are a lot better. A little bit less summer patch, for example. A lot of that has to do with cultural practices. I wanted to set the table because what has happened so far will inform what we do for the rest of the year, and also to validate if you felt like it's been a hard year, that's because it's been a hard year. The ABW part has actually been sometimes with the anthracnose, where the anthracnose happened first and the ABW came in second. There could be a relationship there. There probably is, but that was one of the interesting things about the anthracnose situation. Here's the BOGO. So this was a field trial in the West where we're trying to do a brown ring patch trial. And there was this localized dry spot. You can see this fairy ring circle in the far right photo. But then another kind of fairy ring came in, and that was a raised fairy ring, and it wasn't quite like regular type 2 fairy ring where it was stimulated. This was a fairy ring that actually was 3-dimensional, and it lifted the entire profile, sand and everything, up out of the surface of the green. And so when mowing happened, it actually raised that section of the substrate, and it left this, not just a lesion, not just a localized dry spot, but it left almost like a crater in that section of the turf. Really interesting for a field research site, not interesting or fun for an actual playable surface. Fortunately, this is a research site. not so fortunately, we were trying to look at Rhizoctonia, and we're trying to look at brown ring patch. And this is really not a common situation. I have not seen this before. There's usually a lot of sprays that happen to a research site leading up to a trial that you're trying to do. And this is a perennial research site. And I thought, well, this is so interesting. Thank you for sharing. And then it started happening in other states as well that we were not doing research on. It started happening at golf courses that were in play, sometimes on hills, sometimes on flat surfaces, often in very sandy sites. Interesting. The extreme weather is increasing pressure on turf through spring, through summer, and through early fall. And this is happening throughout most of the states where I steward products, develop products, and work with sales and with end users and the channel. And that's in part the management that we do in managing turf. It's a lot of really intense practices and the changing weather and what is happening with this El Nino cycle. And so we're trying to make tweaks to our programs, be responsive, pay really close attention to what's happening, and then go into the end of summer and beginning of fall with an eye on protecting turf from these stresses from the winter and what we know will be coming. Not only disease, but also plant health and stress resilience. And so I want to give you an example of some of the things that we know can help. Not just preventive programs, but programming best practices that we have seen provide reliable safety nets. And I'll give you an example of this. We have max assurance programs that go out with a disease and a complex in mind and prevent those diseases. And this is a fescue stand, and they're on a Fairy Ring Max Assurance program. And I was looking at the stand of turf, and they'd made an application for Fairy Ring, and I wanted to confirm that all was well, and ended up seeing an unplanned demonstration, which is actually how a lot of research happens. You see something happen, and then you go back and you test it later to say, this was July, this summer, cool season turf stand. They treat on 28-day intervals, which is how the Fairy Ring program works. And they had sprayed with one of our intrinsic brand fungicides that was programmed in for summer protection, not only on Fairy Ring, but also for stress protection for plant health benefits. And it was about a week before I visited. And so I'm looking at this stand. I was looking for Fairy Ring. I was looking at the canopy. I was looking at the profile. We had taken some cup cutter samples. I was looking for mycelia. So far, so good. But I'm looking at this turf and I'm thinking, I know it's due to be mowed. This is regular senescence, but I see something on the blades. So I get my hand lens, that's me, and I look very closely and I can find a few that have these previously undetected dollar spot infections. Dollar spot's kind of new in the far west. It's only been probably in the last 7 to 8 years. First, they came back in diagnostic samples, and then we confirmed, no, it's dollar spot. In the beginning, people didn't believe any of the manufacturer reps. They thought, you're just trying to sell fungicides. But then they started seeing it in their own diagnostic reports, and now we know we have dollar spot in the far west. These are remaining inactive lesions. There were very few blades that had them left, but I was able to find some. I had to go through the photos that I took with like massive magnification to find the remaining lesions. They are now inactive and they're mostly gone. That Fairy Ring application caught the dollar spot infection. That's what good programming does. It's cost effective because it protects not only for what you were going after, but what you didn't even know was starting to happen because this infection had been stopped days ago, the day the application was made. And so that's why we want to program, and we want to try to hit our intervals at least, but also be paying close attention to, do we need to start moving them in? This course didn't need to, but we need to be staying on top of the intervals. So that's really why we want to be proactive and thinking about fall disease protection now while it's still August. This is our cool season disease calendar roughly. We've already been through April, May. We've been through our June summer patch flushes where it would have shown up had we not hit our window when we were at 65 degrees in the profile in spring. In July, we see our warm diseases like patch diseases, brown patch in cool season, large patch and warm season. We see our anthracnose primary this year, secondary some years. You may have had secondary too this year. And then we're really still in gray leaf spot territory this season. I've talked to people about gray leaf spot last week and this week, but we're starting to think about fall diseases like our spots, dollar spot primarily. For a lot of the country, 70% of the country and the market, leaf spots. We can get Dreschlera, bipolaris. We can get leaf spots like melting out can still happen. You could get rust and powdery mildew if you're really lucky, if you're in a cooler part of the country. But we'll be moving into snow mold soon too, and really thinking about overwintering for those of you lucky enough to get a winter. In Denver, here last year, we got one snow down on the valley floor. It melted, and that was it. That's all we got. All of us are forecasted, most of us, I think, to get a decent normal winter this year. Maybe we will, and maybe we won't, but we're going to plan for a regular winter. This is the BASF product portfolio across those seasons, looking at kind of the way we set up our products. When we write programs, we also slot in other products. We slot in straight contacts. We slot in competitive products that round out rotations. These are rotated across a variety of modes of action, but most people are going to need, particularly in the northeast of the country, a number of different products. And so there'll be more products in here. These are just the BASF portfolio products. We're going to talk today a lot about Aramax. I'll talk about some other products as well. Our focus is on the diseases and really how to get the best protection and the plant health benefits. Talking about Aramax, Aramax is a product we talk about pushing the program to the max because it put two classes of chemistry together that help resistance management, particularly when we think about a disease like dollar spot. Aramax is a product that was grassroots developed, or the demand for it was pushed by golf course superintendents because you guys tank mixed it together before we had it formulated into a finished product. These are dual active ingredients of pyraclostrobin, which is a group 11 strobilurin, and tritonizole, which is a group 3 DMI. It gives broad spectrum disease protection with two broad spectrum classes of chemistry, and it's also long lasting, and it also gives good resistance management. Thinking back to how we were controlling dollar spot for a long time with mostly the class 7s SDHIs and the class 3 DMIs. This brings a group 11, which is not a class of chemistry we typically think of for dollar spot control, but pyraclostrobin does have dollar spot efficacy. In fact, the fine fescue that I showed you had only been treated with pyraclostrobin insignia. That's what was put down for fairy ring protection and fairy ring control and for plant health benefits because it's an intrinsic product. So you have those two molecules. And when we think about cool season disease and really the highlights of where Aramax stands out, those diseases listed on the right are kind of our focus. Aramax is used on the shoulders of the season in spring and in fall on greens. And during the summer, we use it primarily as a fairway product, but you can use it both places because the way that it's been formulated is very easily and very safely, keeping in mind that Trinity was an early generation DMI. We formulated it together at the full rate of insignia and the 1 ounce rate of Trinity. So what that means is when you go to use this product, it's one rate for every disease. It's 43.6 fluid ounces per acre and 1 ounce per 1,000 square feet. So that's your fairway rate and your greens rate. You have these two active ingredients, these two molecules that have long proven track records, and you get reliable, long-lasting protection up to 28 days residual. And that's based on what we see in field trials and based on Rick Latton's premise of the better your control is when you make your application, the longer your residual is going to last. But we see that over and over again in our data, which I'm going to show you a very tiny amount of because I know nobody likes charts. So thinking about dollar spot, when we first started doing the golf data for this product, dollar spot was a huge focus for us. You see your disease check there, you see your Aramax results, and this is on higher cuts of turf. So fairway turf is really what our initial focus was. This is at University of Connecticut in 2022. on a 28-day spray interval. And so that makes sense for fairways, not what you would typically do for greens and dollar spot, right? So for fairways during the summer, this is a very common application as part of a program, and you're getting 2 active ingredients, 2 modes of action, which I really like because in a lot of the country, I'm always thinking about resistance management because of the long reliance on group 3s and later on group 7s. And we didn't use group 11s. So I really like to put this into fairway programs. Here you have 2 different intervals, 21 and 28 days, and you're looking at area under the disease progress curve, which is a really simple way to think about this is over time. This is a month's worth of control and how well did it stack up compared to the disease check. So 21 days, 28 days, both clean. This is Bruce Clark at Rutgers in 22. Here we're looking at non-treated, which looks dreadful, and we're looking at a 14 and a 21 day, and they both look really good. 2024 bent grass fairways. So this is just giving you an idea of something to think about is how have you been doing on fairways? How have you been doing on greens? How are you feeling in general coming into the fall season? Are you feeling like you need to make up for a really rough season on dollar spot? Or are you feeling like, I feel pretty good. I feel like I'm just going to want to clean up and go to bed on dollar spot. Or are you feeling like, man, this has been a year? Then different approaches might be called for to carry you the rest of the way into winter to make sure that you're not making up for a really tough year in the spring. That's why we set the table to start with. So here again is area under the disease progress curve, and I want to show you data in a different way. This is looking at rotational data where companies put in their program to run for a period of time, and it's all their products rotating through a period of time, and what does it look like? And in this case, what we're looking at is 3 BASF programs run on different intervals because we really saw interval be a problem for a lot of different states in the country this year. So you've got a control, nada. You've got competitive, which is Syngenta in this case, I believe. You've got a BASF 21-day program that is just Insignia. So it's not using Aramax. You've got a BASF 21-day program that's Aramax instead of Insignia. And then you've got a BASF 14-day program that's based on Aramax. And all 3 BASF programs include other BASF products. Let's take a look. Here is your non-treated. You have a number 2 program that includes 14 days, and it's got Aramax and Exemplar, SDHI chemistry, Maxtima, group 3 chemistry, safe group 3 chemistry, and Cardis, which is a contact and an SDHI. You've got Maxtima again, which is our very safe group 3, meaning you could put a PGR with it if you wanted to. It could be pretty warm that day, all good. And then go to the program number 3, and that one is a 21-day interval. So now you're going a little bit longer, a lot of the same products. And then number 4 is you're going to go that longer interval, 21 days, but now you're only using Insignia. So you don't have Aramax in this trial. You don't have any triaconazole, no dual active ingredients. And then number 5 is the Syngenta program with Posterity Forte, Secure Action, Daconil Action, and Brisquet, and you're on a 21-day interval. Good? Okay, let's look, see what we get. Here is your first observation on June 2nd. Aramax 14 days, Aramax 21 days, Insignia 21 days, your competitive 21 days, and your disease check. 14 and 21 day Aramax look pretty similar. Insignia looks not as good. So having those 2 active ingredients, those look pretty similar. And then things start to slide for everybody else. Comparable to the disease check, yes. Here we are 7 days later, 14 days apart. You're at June. Remember, it's pretty warm. 14 days makes a real difference here. That shorter interval compared to 21 days, even with the triaconazole, in addition to the Insignia, compared to the competitive and the disease check, that shorter interval is making a difference in high pressure scenarios. Let's look 7 days later. Now we're really starting to see a difference here. So that shorter interval, in addition to 2 active ingredients, the 2 active ingredients does make a difference compared to the insignia, but it still cannot hold up against heavy disease pressure of dollar spot in the middle of summer. So that's why I emphasized and set that table about intervals, because this year it made a difference. This was 2025, but we've just been seeing this shift in the last couple of years. So this was a really valuable trial to drive that home. If warm season folks are on here, I don't want to leave you out. This is Fort Myers, Florida, and this is dollar spot pressure, heavy dollar spot pressure, where the treated tee box closest to us is cleaner, as we can see, compared to farther out where they didn't get treated, but the dollar spot pressure is ramping up as the season continues. And so I'm going to show you more pictures of where treatment was kind of cut off, either outside of the green, outside of the collar. And we have to decide where not to treat and where not to treat, but sometimes you really can see the difference. And this is one of those examples. And it's helpful, I think, for folks who grow warm and cool to remember both can get dollar spot. This is Incardus, which is an SDHI chemistry of boscalid, which is a dollar spot material, plus chlorthalonil, which is a contact compared to our disease check here, which you almost, if you didn't have a great eye for dollar spot, would not realize was dollar spot, because it could be a lot of things happening there. This is a Rutgers trial from 2023. You have flexible rate options with Incardus, and it's nice because, again, 2 actives working on dollar spot for you here. And I really like that if you're someplace where resistance is a concern. This gives you 2 modes of action happening, and we like Incardus at the beginning of the season and at the end of the season. It helps you start clean, it helps you end clean. And Incardus also works on Rhizoctonia, your solanize, large patch and brown patch. I like it better for brown patch in cool season. You're asking a lot of it on large patch, but it's a really nice cleanup material for dollar spot. And it's a great fall material. It also does some activity on algae, which is really nice. Not that you would have any of that. Other dollar spot materials for broader applications include Maxtima, which is our mefentrifluconazole DMI product, and Navicon, which is Maxtima plus Insignia. Any product that has Insignia in it will have the intrinsic name with it, which means it's going to give you the plant health benefits of enhanced recovery from stressors, from insult, like aerification. You'll see faster hole closure. But the real benefit here is you can use these products at any temperature on any kind of turf you want, any place you want on a course. Excellent dollar spot protection, control, and they're also part of our holiday spray program and Fairy Ring Max Assurance, Large Patch Max Assurance, and just really solid partners for pretty much anything you're going to need them for. Lexicon Intrinsic and Navicon Intrinsic are greens program products. So broad spectrum protection from 26 diseases. Anything you see intrinsic on is going to give you really nice broad spectrum coverage. Part of our holiday spray program and plant health products. We'll talk more about that. But these are really our trusted partners for delivering those championship conditions ahead of really important events like tournaments, anytime your course is going to be filmed, anytime you're concerned about something happening, you know it's coming. And you want to be able to protect the turf or give it the best chance to recover from something like an aerification event. I like to put Lexicon down when I know an aerification is coming, especially if you have Fairy Ring, because you're going to be oxygenating that profile, and it helps prevent flares, particularly if you have LDS. We will talk more about this. Better resistance management to susceptible pathogens. So that works when the pathogen is susceptible or is sensitive to both of the active ingredients in either material. One, Lexicon is a group 11 and group 7. Navicon is an 11 and a 3. I'll give you some resources for this. I want to say one last thing about dollar spot before we move on. And that is, if you're familiar with Occam's razor is the idea that the simplest answer is usually the right one versus the more complicated one. Our horse is our little simple friend, and the zebra is our probably more attractive and complicated answer for any question that comes up. When we think about dollar spot resistance, we tend to want to think this is clearly resistance when an application doesn't work, but the answer tends to be horses rather than zebras. But there are probably a lot of people on this call who have maybe twice, there could be twice the experience of my 15 years in this field. And sometimes it is going to be resistance, right? Claridia is like anthracnose, where it is one of the pathogens, along with pyracularia, gray leaf spot, that is susceptible to developing resistance to chemistry. So it can happen, but we want to rule out all the simple answers first. Like, we didn't ID the pathogen, right? We thought it was dollar spot, and actually it was rhizoctonia. That happens. Or we didn't get the greatest coverage, or we did clean up the dollar spot and there was also another pathogen. That also happens. So what we try to do is program for zebra preventive applications for the time of year. Sometimes if I get a photo and I'm not positive, like that Encartis untreated control picture I showed you, if it's the right time of year and the conditions are right, and I'm pretty sure it's X, but it also could be, that's why I always ask the reps, what turf type is this? Where are they? I look up the weather. I ask, what did they spray last time and how long ago was it? So I know what they missed. I make a recommendation from the options they've given me that will cover them for what else it could be. That's what zebra preventive programming is, just to be sure. But we do test for resistance just to make sure. I just wanted to throw that out there. Also, cool looking zebra. Fall disease protection and response, we have simple solutions, economical solutions. Aramax will treat dollar spot, and it's also going to be in our snow mold max assurance, but it also picks up 25 other diseases. And that's the nice thing about those programs that catch a lot of things that you may not have even looked for. That fescue dollar spot, you couldn't even see it from above in the canopy. I looked down and said, this looks great. Let me take a closer look. I had to look really close to see those slash lesions that were already on their way out and had mostly been mowed off. You have rotation options. Exemplar will pick up dollar spot, leaf spots, patch diseases, fairy ring, algae. Encartis will pick up algae and those patch diseases as well as dollar spot too. And it's a good start and stop finish product with some contact in it with the chlorthalonil. So lots of good options, and then big broad spectrum options as well with Lexicon and Navicon. And we have other options as well too. So if you have niche needs that are not met by these recommendations and options, we can help with those, as well as competitive fill-ins that can do a lot of work for you as well. So I have some favorites from our competitors' portfolios that I like to recommend. Some of them I wish were in our portfolio. And when we write custom programs, I put in lots of different modes of actions besides the 3s, 7s, 11s, and contacts, Pythium specialists, all kinds of things to make sure that you get a well-rounded program. Let's talk about snow mold. This is our BASF Snow Mold Max Assurance program. This is a flexible, customizable program that lets you build the protection that you need depending on where you are in the country. This is an assured program and it's affordable protection. So you can put it on greens, tees, fairways, wall to wall, whatever you need. And the QR code will take you right to the program, or you can contact your sales rep or one of us to send it to you. I don't think you need our help making decisions about which option you want. Let me show you how it works. First, let me show you the data, then I'll show you how it works. So here's your disease check over here on the left. This is Paul Koch's work. There are two people that I go back to their data over and over again. This is Kyle Miller's cooperator. I wish he was mine. He's so lovely to work with. Both of our snow mold researchers are just the best. For one thing, it's a very charismatic disease to work with. So great photos. The disease check is over here on the left. You can see your pressure is not good. Your Aramax treatment is just Aramax. It's one application of Aramax at that very simple rate. You put that down before the snow comes. If you have low pressure for snow mold, that's it. That's all you do. Have a nice winter. See you in the spring. If you have moderate pressure, you put down Aramax and you tank mix one thing. You can use 26 GT, you can use Medallion, you have a list of things you can choose from. I like PCNB, but I work where it's pretty wintry, or it has been in the past. Some people don't want to use that product. If you have high pressure and your snow cover is going to last for a long time, we want you to put more things in the tank, but it's up to you which things you put in the tank and how many of them. We'd like you to put more things in the tank. You can see that you get better results when you put more things in the tank. I think I get the best results in heavy snow for longer if PCMB is one of them. You can see the results are good here. This is the winter that ended in 24. My researcher is Henry Wetzel, and he works in northern Idaho, northern central Idaho, and Montana. And his trials are fun because he sometimes will get all three pathogens, both the Typhulas and Microdochium. Last year, he did a trial where we did the queen of snow mold, which is you put out 2 applications of Aramax plus all the tank mixes, all the products, and you do it twice. Halfway through the winter, you go and you dig it out and you uncover the greens and you do it again with the full tank mixes, because the snow is so heavy and it's so deep and it's so long. And then you see what happens in the spring. And we got really good results. And I'm still evaluating that data because I just got it back a couple of months ago. So this is 2022. I want to say we had all the pathogens. One of them is more charismatic. Please note that the geese participated in this trial and left their signature on both sets of photos. But the Aramax treatment here, this is Aramax alone, is holding up really well. So you never know, even on the same site, if you're going to get the constellation of all three. You never know if you're going to have adequate snow. You never know if it's going to stay or if it's going to come and melt and come again and freeze. You just don't know. These geographies that Henry works in are quite variable from year to year. We also do work in Canada. This is Insignia and Trinity Aramax, and we applied here to bentgrass playing surfaces. Their variability for cover was plus or minus 10 days on 100, varied by location, looks really good in spring. This is that other situation I was telling you about where they treated the green and part of the collar, and then they did not treat around the edge. The other thing that happens in Canada and lots of places, actually in the Pacific Northwest, is that trees will shade as the snow starts to melt. And sometimes they'll have microdochium on greens or fairways or approaches in the shape of a tree. Really common in the Pacific Northwest. You can see where the treatments went out. Grass looks pretty good. Where it didn't, a little bit more breakthrough. Here is how the program works. So you dial in your expected pressure, which I recognize is a challenge, and then you pick the products that you want to mix in. So you've got PCMB, you've got Medallion, iprodione. Some people use chlorthalonil. I think there's some other options as well. This is not all of them. You can choose other things too. You are the person who chooses. It's your property. It's your skin in the game. You're going to determine what you're going to do here. 90 to 100, 100 to 120, 120 to 140 days of protection. And then in the spring, you're going to see if you were right, and you're going to let us know if you are not satisfied with the Aramax protection. We have had really good results from this. Periodically, there's a miss for a variety of reasons. The weather is unpredictable. This last year, we had some issues where people would put their application down, and then 60 days would go by and there'd be no snow, or 75 days would go by and there would have been a tremendous amount of liquid precipitation, which was really difficult. So sometimes another application was made as though it were in season, even though it was December. not much snow mold breakthrough, actually. If you decide, I'm going to wing it this year, I'm not doing it, and you go through the winter with no protection and you come back out into the melt and you start to see this is happening, just make an application. You can do it with Aramax and liquid. You can do it if it's a teeny area or you're a very small course with pillar in the granule. When I lived in Boise, I did that many a year because I was traveling and the snow came and it was too late. So you got to do what you got to do. We also have a large patch max assurance program that's for warm season turf. I mention this to you now because it's fall and now is the time to act. This is the time that you would be making these applications. If you're in the desert, low desert in the Southwest, high desert in the upper northern states, any place in California, here in Colorado, wherever you may be, and you have what Dave Kopech used to call Bermuda decline, same. You would also be taking action about now or in September, as late as early October. We have a program for that as well. It's a fall application or a spring first aid application, we'll call it. And I have a program I can send you for that as well. Better to act in the fall if you don't want turf damage, especially because people play through the winter. So you can get in touch with your rep or with me, and I'd be happy to help you with that. I want to mention Fairy Ring Max Assurance too, even though we weren't going to talk about Fairy Ring today, because there's something that you can do in the fall to help if you've had a rough Fairy Ring season, if you've had dry down or weather-related injury this year, or if you just don't want to have any shenanigans next spring. So I want to mention this to you. The courses that we work with at BASF, the courses I have had the opportunity to work with in the sales reps, because this was a career that I came to as a second career. Many of you know, if you know me, many of the superintendents, directors of agronomy, many of you have so much experience that their well-validated practices have informed my recommendations. So I learned from school, I learned from colleagues, and then I learned from superintendents and directors of agronomy. Last year, I worked with a superintendent who had such immaculate greens, so firm, so beautiful, when every course around was having major dry down problems. Not their fault. That was just how the weather was. And I said, what are you doing? What is going on? And he told me. And then a few weeks later, I was at a GCSAA meeting and I heard Dr. Mike Richardson at University of Arkansas say, you know what you should be doing? You should all be priming with your wetting agents. And so I started making that recommendation. And sure enough, nobody who did it broke. They were following their wetting agent recommendations for timing, whatever it was. We don't really micromanage that except to say, don't go longer than X. And nobody broke. The priming made a huge difference because of that superintendent. I didn't tell anybody who it was. I'm not telling you either, but it made a massive difference. So this is what I saw last year too that was really interesting. This is not type 1, this little brown arrowed spot. This is type 2 that was so stimulated, it burned out the turf. Maybe you've seen that before. I had never seen that before. Really interesting stuff. So I want to show you the recommendations. Here they are. This is a priming recommendation for a wetting agent. So you use your wetting agent, however you use it, 4 weeks, hopefully no longer, unless you're already floating the grass. Go ahead and use your wetting agent the way that you use it. But for your first wetting agent app of the year, use a premium wetting agent. I'm sure you know what I mean by that. Pellets, whatever you want to use. Go ahead and put that out at near or at the top of the rate range and a good water volume so that you can prime. And this should be a penetrant surfactant type wetting agent. And what that's going to do is target your overwintering LDS and any active fairy ring that made it through the winter because maybe you weren't cold enough this year, or before the snow's off and you're out there thinking, let's do stuff, that fairy ring is already kind of like, hey, it's already starting. Okay, so that's the priming application. Then start the BASF Max Assurance Program. And when you do that and you go to your in-season wetting agent, don't use some weird ag wetting agent that's meant to get herbicide down through the debris layer to the soil. Don't do that. Use good wetting agent. I'm sure you are. I don't need to tell you this. You know this. That's the new priming recommendation I make based on Richardson and you excellent superintendents who told me what you do to be so clean. Here's my rescue for dry down fall wetting agent suggestion I want to make to you. Consider a fall pre-prime now. Consider making one now. If this year has given you a run for your money with dry down conditions, if you've had any of that fairy ring that was three-dimensional and kind of popped up above the surface and then you mowed it off like you were doing a mini phrase, pre-prime now. You're going to do it again in spring as well, but think about doing one now with whatever your fancy wetting agent is. This is not my area. We don't do wetting agents. Whatever you like, do one now or do it soon, like fallish, just so you can prevent some of the hydrophobicity that's thinking about coming back next spring. Do it again in the spring and then just use your in-season wetting agent and have a nice year. I think it's going to make a big difference. I have some courses that do this who said it made a huge difference. And every time superintendents say, you know what, solve that problem for me. And then I go out and I tell other courses to do it. I always follow up with them. They always say, you were right. That did take care of that. And I always say, well, it wasn't my idea. It was your idea. So do that and get back to me. Let's talk about plant health. This is our Healthier Greens holiday spray program. If you've not seen this before, I'm not going to belabor it, but I want to give you a quick overview and show you what it can do for you and do for your roots. Speaking of dry down, stresses, disease, the things that go through the winter and come back and are perennial problems for us, because this is something I know from personal experience, from my plant research trials, from my efficacy trials, and from customer testimonials, makes a tremendous difference in what we put to bed this year that comes back next year better. We have a warm season program. We have a cool season program. These are holiday sprays that you don't have to follow exactly on this calendar that are for warm season, greens, and fairways. If you've never done holiday spray with BASF before, most people start with greens and see if they like it, see if they like the timing, see if they like the results. Most people do. And they are timed to be on top of intensive management practices like aerification, overwintering, warm temperatures, heavy traffic, and they protect turf from all the diseases, some we talked about today, but then the really heavy disease pressure time like summer, and they help turf recover from stress events. So all the stresses we talked about, plus the ones we don't plan for, like a broken main line. So warm season is here. We're focused on cool season. For greens, we time them around Memorial, 4th of July, kind of the hottest part of August, and then one around Labor Day. And then this is what it's based on. It's based on all this research that initially started with testimonials from crop, made their way over to turf, and what we saw was differences in things like establishment of sprigs in warm season, getting sod established, so faster tack down, better tensile strength of that sod, better ability to close holes after an aerification. Recent trials, what we've seen are things like this root tubes, where you see the root length and the vigor in bent grass. This was so exciting because when I first started, we were really doing Bermuda. If you're making Pilex applications to control Bermuda, you know why we used Bermuda as our test subject. Now we do more trials with cool season turf, and you can see the tubes here on the left. We pull those plants out, we wash down the roots, and you can see the difference between control plants and those that were treated with Lexicon. It's a massive difference in the roots. So that means when you have a stress event, you've got a lot of plant under the ground to help that canopy recover. So if you have a heat dome, you're going to recover faster. If you have an accidental scalping, you're going to recover faster. Anything that happens to that plant, you've got a lot more biomass underneath the surface to recover more quickly. You're treating them anyway for disease. You may as well have a plant that's got a lot more oomph to come back from it when something goes wrong. We made these little acrylic plexi windows that have the plant actually suspended in them so you can see the comparison for yourself. So we'll have those we had them at the golf show this past year. We did hydroponics a few years ago. That was really stressful. This is a little easier. This is just the regular rate for 1,000 square feet. It's nothing special. We didn't do anything crazy. There's no magic here. There's no AI. We also do these kinds of trials where we do tiller counts. So we take a cup cutter plug of that cool season turf we grow in our greenhouse. From that cup cutter plug, we then take a core and then we pull it all apart and we count the number of tillers. And we do comparisons between the products. And the reason we did that is if you've used Lexicon, if you like Lexicon, you know what it does. When we brought Navicon Intrinsic to the market, we wanted to know it does it too, right? Every time we bring an intrinsic product to the market, we want to compare back to the original molecule and to the other products on the market because we know what they do in the field. Does the new product do it in the bench? Does it do it in the field? We confirmed that Navicon does it a little bit better. It's a different class of chemistry DMI. It's a new generation DMI. And when you bring something like Aramax to the field, you want to really confirm because it's not a new class DMI, as you know. It's a first generation DMI formulated for safety at that 1 ounce rate of Trinity and really efficacious. It's a great product. Is it going to be okay? So we would tested it. Are we going to get the plant health benefits? Is that triticonazole going to antagonize the plant health and the intrinsic? It doesn't. It doesn't at all. So you get this excellent activity. You still see this increased number of tillers. You still get all the plant health benefits. That's what we're testing here. This was in 2025 with our excellent greenhouse technical technician, David Olvera. He is fantastic and does really good work. And then we've got these turf plot plugs comparing the products across the plugs just so you can actually see them in action and confirm. It's one thing to see data, it's something else to actually see the plants. On our website, the Better Turf site for BASF, you can find all kinds of data and sheets and information if you want to look at individual products. If there's one that you wanted to know more about, like Incardis, or you wanted to know about herbicides, I mentioned Pylex, you wanted to deep dive something like that, or you wanted to find your sales rep, this website will take you directly to that. If you're interested in more about EOP, or you want to find us at the golf show next year, it's just a few months away now. You can go to that website and get more information. There's also a sheet about all of our intrinsic products. So it will give you info about ones I didn't talk very much about, like Pillar or Honor. If you wanted to know more about Insignia, this will give you that information. We're going to have time for questions. I just wanted to give you kind of the overview on fall disease protection, the plant health story on our best in grass chemistry, and then also give you a way to get in touch with me. And that is here. This QR code will give you my contact information. That's a picture of the 3-dimensional fairy ring doing its thing. This is a dot card. So when you click on that QR code, it's going to pop it open and give you my contact info, and you'll just need to save it. It'll put it right into your contacts. It would be better for you if you did not email me. It takes me a long time to get back to email, but I do respond to texts. So now I will take it back to Guy, and he will take over for us.
Wow, that's a lot to think about, Jen. And we do have some questions here. And if anybody has questions in the audience, type them into your chat function, and we'll try to get to them here in the next 5 minutes. But Jen, which fall disease management practices consistently deliver the greatest return on investment in the spring?
Which fall disease practices? I would say making sure that everything is buttoned up clean and that we are not leaving active pathogen over the winter for those of us who put the course to bed. Not everyone does, but to the degree that we are picking up all the pathogens, and not leaving things down on the surface, that is probably the best practice of not elongating intervals and kind of phoning it in at key points when pathogen is really multiplying.
Jen, we have a question here from one of the attendees. Where does Pythium fit into some of the graphs and charts you were showing early in the presentation?
Yeah, it's hard to commit because it's so different state by state. So summer is a key time I think everyone can participate in because the canopies are so humid. Some parts of the country get a cool season, what they call cool season Pythium in the fall, whereas the high deserts and low deserts get straight up blight at that time because they overseed. Anybody who overseeds and is watering their seed can participate in blight at that time. Root rot, summer. So I feel like you could have one Pythium of some type at any type of time of year, depending on what kind of grass you're growing, what practices you're doing. And so having a Pythium specialist or a few is a good idea. The strobies typically do work, but they're good preventively. Don't lean on them for active Pythium infections. You want to have a specialist, and it should not just be mefenoxam because it's good chemistry, but it's very established. So if you're using mefenoxam and you're using propamacarb, add something else. At least one other thing, one of the newer Segway and Serrata, and pick some more things because Pythium is more susceptible, more vulnerable to developing resistance than the other three I mentioned: gray leaf spot, anthracnose, and dollar spot. Pythium, it will be a zebra in no time at all. You have got to be rotating.
Jen, how have changing weather patterns altered your approach to disease management heading into this winter?
It's made me very vigilant, and it's kept me on my toes. You guys have kept me on my toes with a potentially new Rhizoctonia disease that looks like brown ring patch but isn't, with those two diseases showing up again. And it was a really good person who told me about it. And I was like, are you sure that's Southern blight? And then the bacterial wilt has sent me down researching that's not a disease. I understand, well, I'm not a pathologist by training, just by admiration and being a fangirl. You guys keep me on my toes. It's good. I'm constantly learning and constantly calling all my experts and finding out more to pass on good recommendations to you. It's fun, but not in a good way because it means you guys are working so hard to stay ahead.
Jen, what are some of the most overlooked fall disease root zone threats that superintendents should be monitoring now to avoid issues next spring?
Well, I didn't even mention some. I gave like a shout to large patch and Bermuda decline. We didn't talk about spring dead spot at all. Some people get rapid blight right now, but it's so small, the areas where it shows up, that I feel like I talk to those people. Yeah, it's like you have to focus, right? So there's other things that we know about, but we didn't have 4 hours for a fireside chat. You guys asked about the ones. Pythium is a big deal right now. And then there's herbicide stuff. That's the other thing too. So we could have spent 3 days together, especially if we'd had my colleagues here.
Well, have you ever done a 3-day chat, Jen?
That would
That
be
would be
so fun.
fascinating.
How fun would that be? A BASF GCI summit of sadness. It's all pestilence and crop protection, but we'd have such a good time.
Any closing thoughts here, Jen?
It's so great to spend time with people and be able to share with you what I have learned when it's relevant and salient and is hopefully helpful. If every person takes one thing away from this that is helpful or a little light bulb, then it was time so well spent. I hope that was the case. Thank you for being here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks, Jen. That was some terrific information and certainly gave everybody watching this a lot to think about. And thanks to everybody who joined us. We can't produce great content without great audiences. And be sure to be on the lookout for more terrific content from golf course industry and BASF. And we hope the rest of your summer goes well, and we hope you start fall strong.